Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week on the program, anti-migrant attacks are back on the news in South Africa, and so are the protests that appear to target the migrants themselves. South Africans say they want the government to stem the tide of illegal foreigners coming into the country and burning already scarce resources, but some of the agitations have turned violent. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Bianca Odumegwu-Ojukwu, has summoned the country's acting high commissioner to the country over the spate of recent attacks which could affect existing relations between the two countries. Their conversation will focus on recent marches held by anti-immigrant groups and documented instances of mistreatment of Nigerians and attack on their businesses. And before this, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights released a statement deploring the xenophobic attacks and vigilante conduct perpetrated on nationals of other African countries in South Africa. The Commission affirms the fundamental rights of all individuals, including non-nationals, to equality, dignity, and the security of their person, lives, and property. It says the xenophobic attacks not only constitute possible violations or abuse of Articles 3, 4, 5, 12, 14, and 28 of the African Charter, but also are contrary to the principle of African solidarity, which underpins the African Charter. I'll be speaking with the President, Ohanaeze Ndigbo in South Africa, Dr. Amaechi Okoko, and National Spokesperson for Action SA, Lerato Ngubeni. They both join me from Johannesburg, South Africa. He joins me from Johannesburg. And Action SA National Spokesperson, Lerato Ngubeni, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Good evening, viewers.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Dr. Okoko, let's begin with you. What are your thoughts on the current goings-on in South Africa as regards the protests against irregular migration?
Yeah, thank you once more again. What we have seen so far is what I call a campaign against undocumented migrants. To me, what I call it a campaign is just to raise public awareness. But unfortunately, we know in public space that undocumented migrants in South Africa, it has been there for some time. And what is going on now is what I may call civic movement, backed by maybe some political parties who feel that also this is an avenue to bring the government to account or to take responsibility. So what is going on currently is not necessarily that it is widespread in South Africa. It's not the sentiment of all South Africans, because I can put measures that have been taken by government to show that government actually is doing something about illegal migrants. So I think also what is happening now, to some of us, we look at it as a political protest.
Lerato, why do you think some South Africans feel that the country should get rid of foreigners now? Why these protests?
Thank you so much, and good evening to Dr. Okoko. I hope I've said it properly. Good evening, sir, and thank you so much for the platform. I think it's very important, the kind of description that Dr. Okoko tried to depict. I just want to add to it by saying this. Firstly, what Dr. Okoko said about the government being absolutely responsible for this disaster and this mess is absolutely true. I think South Africans don't necessarily want people to go anywhere. I think South Africans are expressing a frustration with the mismanagement of migration in and out of South Africa by the government. We have what we call the Border Management Authority, which is chronically underfunded. Yes, the government is only now starting to say, let us give this Border Management Authority a little bit more resources. But I can tell you there absolutely are no borders. The Border Management Authority cannot keep up with the level of influx of people who are coming in, particularly through specific borders into the country. Our border between Mozambique and South Africa, our border with Zimbabwe, and of course people do come from far north, cascading down all the different countries all the way through to Zimbabwe, and then of course into South Africa. And so I think that the acute responses that you are seeing now are as a result of the strain on scarce resources, particularly for poorer communities, where a lot of the migrants who come into the country and those who are illegal, who don't necessarily have the means at the outset, find themselves settling within these already strained communities. And that's really the crux of the matter. You know that South Africa is now sitting at 23 million South Africans unemployed. And that is a huge indictment on the current government. And so that is really at the crux of this matter, and I think we should elevate the conversation a little bit more, and I hope we're going to do that in this interaction.
But if there are 23 million South Africans who are without jobs currently, and this problem is firmly at the doorstep of the government, how exactly is sending those migrants back going to help anyone, or help the government, or help the people, or help alleviate the pressure on the scarce resources in South Africa?
Well, firstly, let me just say that it will help purely because, one, the government needs to do what it's supposed to do. It needs to ensure that South African laws and immigration law in particular is being adhered to, not at 25%, not with loopholes where officials within the system are able to ensure that they get kickbacks from those migrants who either some of them are desperately trying to get into South Africa, some of them are really coming into South Africa for nefarious reasons, and they have found a gap, and you are having corrupt officials who are enabling this particular behavior, let alone the fact that there's high incidences of corruption that happen in the system. And unfortunately, the little peanuts that are left, South Africans feel that those peanuts should really be left for them and their services to be rendered, and not for people who have come into the country illegally. And I think that is at the bottom and the cold face of this, that why are we having a debate around people who come into a country, into a space illegally? South Africans we can't travel anywhere, you can't travel anywhere without proper documentation. Why is it that we are having a huge debate around migrants in the country who are here illegally? There are legal migrants in South Africa. They work in the banks, they work in financial services sector, they work in the healthcare sector. We have no problem with those people because they've come into the country, they've adhered to the laws, and South Africans have welcomed them. Why must we then legalize and normalize what is abnormal? Illegal immigration is an issue because it impedes upon our ability to provide services that are necessary for the South African public and then for those who are also here legally.
So it does seem like the anger should be targeted at the government. And unfortunately, people, these illegal migrants as you describe them, are the ones being targeted in attacks. There have been videos posted online. There are messages on social media, all targeted at these migrants. And there have been calls for people to leave the country. How do you explain that?
I really find it very problematic that it doesn't look like this issue is being directed at the government. It is being directed at the government. We marched to the Gauteng provincial legislature the other day. But when you march and you demonstrate, you're marching through the streets of your city or whatever. You want maximum exposure, and that is really what happened. Of course, in a mass demonstration, there does unfortunately happen to be instances where things go wrong, because it's not easy to deal with crowds that are absolutely very emotive and very angry. And we've done our level best to ensure that the marches have been peaceful, but to locate it in a situation where a particular incident now blows up the entire issue that people are dealing with, we believe that is misdirected, and we believe that it's dishonest and disingenuous. And so the debate that we really must have is whether, if this were in another country, for example, if this was in Nigeria, or this was in Ghana, or this was in even Zimbabwe, you know, you cannot, as foreign nationals, just arrive in a city or in a country. You have no papers. We can't account for you. We are dealing with high levels of crime within our society. How you expect us to be able to deal with those things if, in fact, we do not know who is here? If citizens are expected to have documentation every time they travel, every time they go anywhere, they've got documentation, they must produce it. The state must know where we are, and the state must police citizens. Why is it that the state must police citizens, but when it comes to illegal migrants, the state must be made to feel, or we must be made to feel as South Africans, as though we are unreasonable people? I mean, if we were unreasonable as a nation, we wouldn't have migrants into South Africa in the first place. We've had migrants into this country since the dawn of democracy, and we've lived peacefully. We've interacted. I have got lots of friends all over who come from all over the world, really, particularly on the African continent. But to minimize the issues that South Africans are grappling with, to instances of hatred or xenophobia or Afrophobia, is absolutely untrue. And I think we are exhausted as South Africans for having to explain ourselves ad nauseum. This is common sense. No one would allow it in their own countries. We don't understand why it must be allowed in South Africa. That is really the gist of the issue, and the gist of the argument and the point of view of South Africa.
Dr. Okoko, I wanted you to respond to some of the things that she's saying. Do you feel that Africans from other countries in Africa are being targeted in the protests? Although she says, according to Lerato, the protests actually are targeted against the government. Now, unfortunately, there have been attacks on certain Africans, as a result of this anger and this emotion that has gone into, the anger against the government. People have been attacked, businesses have been destroyed. What is your response to this?
Okay, before I respond to what you just asked, I just wanted to put something in perspective. I did not say that government is government's responsibility, but what I'm trying to say here, I said that the marching or the campaign they are trying to raise public awareness so that government can take responsibility. That is what I've said. Secondly, the thing she mentioned, if it were in other countries, how will it be handled? We have various evidence to show that in other countries, when you have issues like this, it's left for the law enforcement to do their job. It's left for the immigration officers to do their job. It's not left for individuals to go on the street and start, acting in a manner that can raise tension in the community. I'm not criticizing what they are doing because they've got the right. This is what we call civic engagement. Civic engagement is allowed in South Africa. So but what I'm trying to say in essence is that we must also understand that the government, even though I'm not speaking for the government, I'm just a migrant, I'm not a politician. I think it could have been better that the ruling party is supposed to be part of this discussion or conversation we are having today. But what I'm trying to say, there are records to show that government have tried to increase their rate of deportation. For example, the other day rate that is up to 46% increase. So which means government is doing something from what is coming out of that kind of record. But for us now to feel that no, the problem lies squarely because the undocumented migrants, they are refusing to go, or they are refusing to actually obey the laws of the land. I don't think is that all that simple. We must understand that these people, most of them are asylum seekers, those who have come, they are running away from things like war, things like oppression or suppression from their home country. I'm not saying that the reason why they must come and become undocumented. I know some of them might have come here, they got their asylum, maybe the asylum expired due to one reason or the other, which is human. It's human to actually fail in certain things. They couldn't put their papers in order. But the truth must be told. People must get their papers right. we as migrants, we know that yes, it's good for you to have your papers right. If you have your documentation, you can actually live freely in the country, which is your host community, and also add value to the host community. And most of these people being targeted now, they are trying to survive. I mean, even though their surviving contribution might be minimal, in the other sense, they are in one way or the other contributing to economic activity, regardless of, even if we don't want to recognize the significance. But what I'm trying to say, in essence, we should not just write them off and say, no, these people must go back home, and if it's in their country, how do we respond? All over the world, people, when they want to treat such a case, they use their enforcement. And I think South Africa have got good laws, and they have strong institutions, except if we are being told that the institutions are failing. But I don't know for that. I think she might be in a better position to tell us because she's a politician. Thank you.
So the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bianca Ojukwu, will be meeting with the South African High Commissioner on Monday to discuss some of these issues that we're talking about here. Dr. Cook, I wanted to get your thoughts on, how that conversation should go and how that could possibly help smoothen, this tension between the two countries, between citizens of the two countries.
Yeah, I really want to say that it's a very welcome development. But before I delve into that, I just want to also emphasize here that ethnicity, nationality, or what I may call race, is not actually linked to a particular crime. Crime has no race, has no ethnicity. Yes, there may be Nigerians who are into crime in South Africa. It doesn't mean it's Nigerians, because when you use Nigerians, it's a general word. You can just say one or two Nigerians or few Nigerians, And of course, we must also be careful, because these people who are doing crime, they're actually going to do the time. That is one thing I like about South Africa. South Africa is a country that have got laws and strong institutions. So let us not do as if we are just pushing the blame to foreigners, especially maybe Nigerians. No, there are other people from other walks of life, including South Africans, who are also criminals. So we should not always be pointing to one particular group of people to say they are known worldwide. I'm not saying that Nigerians are saints, but at the same time, I'm not saying that Nigerians are violent. But we need to be very sensitive the way we use certain words when we want to qualify our fellow African brothers and sisters. But having said that, in terms of what you've just asked, it's going to be a very good development. Remember, Nigeria and South Africa have got a very warm relationship far back, even before the new democratic dispensation in South Africa, which is over 30 years. I think both countries have worked together in various spheres, especially trade, cultural exchange, and others. And we will continue doing that. I think once the minister meets with ambassador, the things that we'll be exploring will be things that have to touch with trying to look at each other as being our brother's keepers. We should not, the Nigerian community in South Africa should not be treated as if they're actually the West African brothers or the West people they have in South Africa. And I don't think Larato can also bear me witness. I don't think that's how South Africans treat Nigerians. It's just unfortunate that these things are coming up. And like I pointed out, this is a political protest. I'm happy Lerato is here. She's a spokesperson of a political party that is behind this protest. There are other political parties who are also against this protest. For example, the economic freedom fighters, they have spoken against this protest in such a manner that the president even asked the organizers of this protest and the civic movement behind it, if they deport 10 Zimbabweans, have they created 10 jobs for South Africa? That's a very crucial question, which I don't think, and I don't expect Larato to answer me here. But what I'm trying to say, let us not do it as if it's the whole political organization in South Africa is pushing out undocumented migrants. I'm not saying, of course, that they support illegal immigration. No, politicians will never support that, including the ruling party and maybe those people in government. I think all of us, especially all the political parties, should work together to ensure that South Africa achieves its aims and purposes in terms of having a better South Africa that is progressive and that is prosperous. And I'm sure once this thing is behind the mind of the politicians, I think there will be a way forward.
Lerato, do you think diplomacy could help in this instance?
We welcome the meeting that is going to take place tomorrow. We're looking forward to its outcomes, and as well as, you know, the consulate general, when they came out of the consulate here in Pretoria, one of the things that some of us did not appreciate is to try and sound alarm on a protest instead of saying, you know, when you come to another person's home, you know, we are Africans. We come into each other's home. We must behave in particular ways. We must behave in a manner that respects the host nation, and that's all what we are asking. Can we be respected? Can we be not sworn at? Can we not be called useless in our own country? That is what has happened, and that is happening by particular groups every time South Africans stand up for themselves to say, we are not going to tolerate particular things happening anymore. And of course, it becomes widespread because that's what the media does. We are in the age of social media now. Social media is uncontrollable. People are able to say whatever they like at any point that they like, but we've never heard not one country denouncing how it is that its people have treated South Africans. But we, even us as a political party, when in the protest that happened when the Nigerian man who then pronounced himself as a king, Igbo king or no, not a king, that sparked a terrible protest that happened in Kukombo City in East London, in the Eastern Cape, you know, there was no denouncing of behavior, of particular kinds of behavior. We came out and denounced the violence that erupted as a result of that protest, which was not the intention of the protest. It was to go and ask the city to account as to, we have the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, to go and ask and find out and ascertain, where is this thing coming from? Why is this happening? But the other nations are able to see how their citizens are behaving in South Africa, and they don't call that behavior out. I have not heard, not even a single day, when we've had an official who has mentioned anything.
Sorry, Lerato, but Dr. Coco was one of those people who denounced that. Sorry, Lerato, but Dr. Coco was one of those people who denounced that and did call out the behavior of this said individual and has decided that, you know, that really shouldn't come up again because that really wasn't really behavior on his part, disrespecting South Africans by doing that.
Yeah, I'm not speaking specifically to the king issue. I'm speaking about nationals who go on social media and say certain things that enrage South Africans. And so I haven't heard that actually officially being done. But we appreciate Dr. Okongo, as I said, even at the beginning of this conversation, to say it's very refreshing to have people like Dr. Okongo who can help us have these debates in a very sober manner. And those are the types of people we want in this country who can actually, you know, add to the conversation and add value to the building of our society. And so we really appreciate that.
Well, this is what Diplomatic Channel is all about. I'm so glad that you could both have civil conversations about this. President Ohanaeze Ndigbo in South Africa, Dr. Amaechi Okoko, thank you so much for joining us on the program. And national spokesperson for Action SA, Lerato Ngobeni, thank you again for joining us on the program. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you for adding to this conversation. We hope that this gets traction and that people understand exactly what the issues are and where they should be directing their complaints and their questions. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, yes.
And that's the program this week. Thank you for watching. Remember, you can send your questions and comments either on the video or to the addresses showing on your screen. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.